Alright, man, peace. So, brothers, I want to make a very quick video pertaining to this brother right here, JB Smoove. I'm also going to be correlating it with a commercial that he did with a relatively famous actor slash comedian by the name of Ken Jeong, because they did a McDonald's commercial together, and at the same time, JB Smoove also made an appearance on the Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman show for the All-Star Weekend festivities. I noticed certain things about JB Smoove, and I've kind of followed his career over the course of the last 15 years or so. For those who don't know, he is extremely talented, but let me say this. Like any and all other high-level entertainers, he does have to be a member of the craft. He has to be initiated into the Babylonian Comedic Mystery School system. He is a venerator of Heru, and I'm going to go about showing you that very diligently, particularly pertaining to himself and Ken Jeong. And the reason why I'm linking them together is because of a certain commercial that they did. JB Smoove, as we can see here, he's going to go over or try to encapsulate his career a bit. He is going on tour right now. And as I've always stated, these top level entertainers for the most part are very talented, but in order for them to accrue a certain amount of fame, there's only one path that they can take. And that's the path towards the Baphomet, the path towards Luciferianism. So we're just going to use this snippet right here, basically as a preamble for the main part of the video. So of course, they're going to talk about it and I'm going to chime in.
Tell us about your tour coming up.
Oh, it's an amazing tour called the Lollygagging Tour. I cannot wait to jump back on the road. As you know, I've been a stand-up for 30 years doing stand-up, so this has been an amazing road for me.
Brothers, that's the most common misconception. Whenever I make videos pertaining to Luciferianism, people try to allege that I'm saying that these people, these comedians, these singers, these actors, they don't work hard or they're not talented. That's not really the case, or these athletes as well. It's not that they're not talented. It's that they want fame. And in order for you to cement fame, you have to embrace what the entertainment industry is about, which is the veneration of Pan, Bacchus, and the Mother Goddess, who when consolidated or brought together are known as the Baphomet, or the goat god, the androgynous goat deity. That's what they venerate. So it's always going to be very common for you to hear that they've been on their grind for 30 years, 35 years, 25 years. Most of these people don't just come out of nowhere. They either come from many of their monarch asset farms, whether it be the Disney program or the Nickelodeon program, or in order for them to take that next step towards fame and hoping that they can monetize all the hard work that they put in, they agree to sell themselves. Not necessarily, quote unquote, sell their soul per se, but they sign that contract and they embrace on that path towards understanding the Kabbalah, the so-called tree of life, which is really a tree of knowledge, worshiping Baal. And eventually, the higher up the ladder they climb, the more they have to do. Blood drinking, ritualistic sacrifice, pederasty, even cannibalism. Am I saying that that is what JB Smoove is doing? No, I'm not saying that because I don't have footage of that. I'm just telling you that's the path that they have to walk down. Because the farther down that path they walk, they believe that that provides a greater amount of illumination for their pineal gland.
That we keep reinventing ourselves and having a good time, but I had to cancel my tour because I was overseas shooting the movie Spider-Man movie.
Let me say this very quickly. A lot of people might not like this. When you see people in these Marvel franchises, the Donald Glovers, the JB Smooves, the T.I.s, the Anthony Mackies, they're chosen because it's already known that they have no problems, they have no hang-ups, there's no stumbling blocks for them when it comes to what they're willing to do. The Marvel movies are meant to be a manifestation or representation of many of the pagan mythological stories of old pertaining to quote-unquote superheroes. The vast majority of these stories are just allegorical versions of the stories of Heru, Baal, Shiva, Zeus, Jupiter, Hera, so on and so forth. All the female heroes are just modern manifestations of the quote-unquote goddesses of old, which are meant to be, an allusion to or a way to venerate the mother goddess archetype, Eve or Semiramis or what have you. The male heroes are meant to be in commemoration of the exploits of Heru or Asar or Baal, whatever you want to call them. That's why Stan Lee had Spider-Man, whenever he shot his web, he made the Manu Cornuto hand sign, the goat hand sign, or the horned hand sign, because Stan Lee was a Kabbalist. So just to get back to the point, JB Smoove got cast the same reason why T.I. got cast, and the same reason why Don Cheadle got cast, and the same reason why Anthony Mackie got cast. It's not because they're not talented. They're very talented. but it's already known in the industry that these people are down with the program. They're down with the craft.
I stopped that from July to October of last year, so I had to cancel my original tour, and now the tour resumes this March when I wrap up Curb Your Enthusiasm, the new season.
Wow.
And
that is where he truly rose to prominence. JB Smoove goes back to Saturday Night Live, and Saturday Night Live is an MK Ultra farm for many comedians, in the same way that the Disney Channel or the Nickelodeon Channel is an MK Ultra farm for child stars. So many of these comedians are programmed through that Saturday Night Live witch coven that is led by, I believe his name is Lorne Michaels. That's how we saw Eddie Murphy and Chris Rock rise to prominence, is through the Saturday Night Live witch coven. JB Smoove also came through there. From there, he transitioned over to Larry David's show, Curb Your Enthusiasm. For those of you who don't know who Larry David is, he's a high-level Kabbalist. He was also the producer of that Kabbalistic show that they pushed and pushed and pushed until it became famous, known as Seinfeld.
Can't wait back on the road. It's going to be an amazing tour. First stop will be Seattle. I know it's a little rainy up there. I love Seattle. San Fran will be on the 2nd of March. The first would be Seattle. A bunch of dates coming up. We got Philadelphia. We got Chicago. We got some amazing cities coming up. We got Orlando.
I like that.
Will you be in New York?
I will be in New York in June doing Caroline's.
Okay.
6 shows in Caroline's.
Awesome.
And brothers, just to get back to the point, to help many of you understand exactly what Saturday Night Live is about and how they're a farm to instill the programming in many of their assets. If any of you have ever seen the classic Eddie Murphy comedic stand-up performance of Delirious, when he first comes out onto the stage, he throws up the goat horn hand signs to the crowd. Something that's become more and more prominent today with top athletes. We see it with Steph Curry, especially in the NBA. They love to throw up the goat horn hand sign. But yeah, JB Smoove has been an asset for a while. One of his handlers is Larry David. Okay, so now, brothers, we're going to pick up with this McDonald's commercial that JB Smoove and Ken Jeong did in order to advertise some of their products, which really should not be consumed by any living organism, especially human beings, because most of the food, quote unquote, that McDonald's produces is not fit for consumption. It does not really matter to them because they're willing to sell anything as long as they can get a paycheck. But let's just understand something. In the comedy world of Hollywood, it's like any other branch of the entertainment industry. In order to ascend to a certain level of success, you do have to bow down the knee to Baal, or the quote unquote pagan triumvirate or triune of the Father God, the Mother Goddess, and their son, particularly the Mother Goddess and their son, Bacchus or Heru or Tammuz, whatever you want to call that sun entity. And when I say sun, I'm talking about S-O-N. And of course, always the Mother Goddess, Hathor or Aset, Sybil, Diana, whatever you want to call that entity. Both these dudes here have bowed down to the pagan goddess and her son. And we're going to prove that later on in this video, as every affluent comedian must do. They're all Luciferians. All the affluent ones that you see attain a certain level of fame and prestige, they have all bowed down the knee to quote unquote Lucifer, the light bearer or light bringer.
Wow. Right? These cheesy bacon fries are tremendous.
I know.
Brothers, let me say this very quickly. As I've already stated, you should not be eating at McDonald's. You certainly should not be eating bacon, which is pork. Pork is not fit for human consumption. There's nothing made at or in McDonald's that is fit for human consumption. That film Super Size Me proved that a very long time ago. I believe that one of the experiments that the person in Super Size Me performed was he took a McDonald's burger, a McDonald's chicken sandwich, McDonald's French fries, and put them all in glass cases and compared them to more organic types of French fries and hamburgers. And the French fries and hamburgers deteriorated over the course of a week. After 3 weeks, the McDonald's food still had not deteriorated, especially the French fries. The French fries had shown no sign of being consumed by fungus or anything like that. So that's how you know that food is not organic or fit for human consumption at all.
I know, crispy bacon is the best thing to ever happen to the fries.
What? It's the fries show. McDonald's world famous fries.
Brothers, let me say this. In the McDonald's French fries, they use something called TBHQ, which basically is just petroleum oil on the French fries as a preservative. I'm not even sure if they use real potatoes when they make them damn French fries. There's all type of information that you could look up on McDonald's. They use antifreeze on the chicken salads. They use antidepressants on the chickens at the chicken coop that is used by McDonald's. That is why people who eat those foods get that overwhelming sensation of being lethargic, lazy, unable to move, being non-productive, so on and so forth. The cheese in the McDonald's hamburgers or cheeseburgers per se, or the Big Mac, the cheese that they use is made from cellulose or wood chips. Brothers should be staying away from that food, man. They use silly putty in the French fries and in some of the chicken and I believe the filet-o-fish as well. They call it, they call it silly putty. The official name is silicone oil.
Featuring bacon. Or is the crispy bacon giving the fries some street cred with a whole new audience?
I'm gonna let bacon think that.
What was that? I couldn't hear you over the bacon ovation.
And as many of you brothers already know, because I see some of you talking about it all the time, they do love to crush beetles and use them for food coloring in the shakes and in the smoothies.
Bacon, bacon, bacon.
When you look at the French fries here, they don't even look real, man. That does not even look like that does not look like French fries that you would get if you were to slice up a real potato. You know what's so funny? I was watching a video of Floyd Mayweather after he beat Canelo Alvarez, and they filmed him going to a McDonald's and he ordered some sausage patties. And the sausage patties in McDonald's, they have something called L-cysteine, which basically is duck feathers or human hair. They use all type of additives in these foods, brothers, at these fast food restaurants. You want to stay away from them if you can. All right, so now, brothers, we're just going to continue on in this epilogue so that hopefully I can provide some context for many of the statements that I've made pertaining to the comedic aspect of the entertainment industry. If I have not mentioned it already, all of these comedians, they have a God entity that they gain inspiration from, whether they know it or not. A so-called pagan deity by the name of Momis, spelled M-O-M-I-S. M as in Michael, O as in Oscar, M as in Michael, I as in India, S as in Sam. Also spelled M as in Michael, O as in Oscar, U as in umbrella, M as in Michael, I as in India, S as in Sam. That's just another name for the sun. When I say the sun, I mean the son of the mother goddess. It's another name for Harpo. And I'm going to illustrate in an irrefutable fashion, beyond a reasonable doubt, that the deity of the comedic world is Harpo, Harpocrates, aka Haru, the quote-unquote son of the mother goddess. There's no doubt about it. As we can see here, JB Smoove is throwing up a hand sign that he alleges is meant to represent his initials, JB. But as we can see, he sneaks in the quote-unquote mudra, or the 666 sign, associated with Saturn. The name Saturn also means the quote-unquote hidden god. That is the god of the entertainment industry. As I've already shown, JB Smoove got his start at the witch coven known as Saturday Night Live. And from there, he was able to advance his career on the show Curb Your Enthusiasm, which was written by and starring the master Kabbalist Larry David, the same person who was the mastermind behind the show Seinfeld. And everyone on the show Seinfeld is a high-level Kabbalist. That's a whole other video for another day. But that is how and why JB Smoove is able to land in so many major motion pictures, so many TV shows. That's what happens once you get down with the team and you're initiated into the craft. That's why all of the adherents to the craft always have to constantly show that, yes, they are loyal to the principles. That is why they're always throwing up these hand signs or closing one eye in their photos. That is why they must do that, because they constantly have to show the rest of their brotherhood and their sisterhood that they are loyal to the pagan godhead of the father god, the mother goddess, and their son. Now this is another photo of JB Smoove. As we can see, as above, so below. He's making the Baphomet pose. We see his right finger, the finger of Jupiter, aka the finger of John the Divine, pointing upward. Left hand pointing downward, or we can say it's flat on the desk, but still it's the same significance. As above, so below. Alchemical hermetic principles. He's a venerator of Hermes. Another name for Hermes is Pan or Tahuti. You know, many times you'll see some of these cats, they'll talk about the entertainment industry and they'll say, all these celebrities, they got to bend over. They got to give up their ass. Well, that's part of the Bacchanalian mystery school. They have to be pansexual. They must be both the giver and the receiver. They have to exhibit both masculine and feminine traits. Their sexual identity must be fluid. That's why they raise their children to be bisexual or homosexual. That's part of what they must sacrifice to show their loyalty to the craft. Here goes JB Smoove again with the right forefinger over his mouth to show what? That he is a worshiper of Harpocrates, the god of silence. He will maintain the secret. He will never tell because he knows what the penalty is. Once again, we're seeing the same pose, the pose of the Baphomet. Right hand up, left hand down. As above, so below. JB Smoove is a pansexual. Hey, everything I'm saying is alleged, by the way. Let me not forget that. Everything I'm saying is alleged. But as we can see right here, my man has the right forefinger and right middle finger pointing up, left hand down. That is how he gets roles in Hollywood. So now here's the other participant in the McDonald's commercial that we reviewed very briefly, Mr. Ken Jeong. Of course, one of his covers is that he started off as a physician. When you look at his history in the entertainment industry, he was an attendee of Duke University. He also moonlighted as a comedian, where he was spotted by Mr. Brandon Tartikoff. For those of you who don't know, Brandon Tartikoff is one of the more famous television producers of the 80s and 90s. He was the executive behind such household staples back in the 1980s like The A-Team, The Cosby Show, Family Ties, etc. Basically, if you're old enough to remember a certain TV show that was on NBC, he probably produced it. Brandon Tartikoff happens also to be a so-called Jew. Once again, he was one of the executives who found Ken Jeong, who happened to be performing his comedy stand-up routine. At least that's the official backstory. And Brandon Tartikoff, as well as another quote-unquote Caucasian Jewish executive, I believe named Buddy Friedman, told Ken Jeong that he was very talented and that he should move out to the LA area. Well, Ken Jeong followed their advice. He moved out to the West Coast and he started working as a physician at Kaiser Permanente. Now, for those of you who might remember that term or that name, Kaiser Permanente, that's a hospital that made a commercial featuring Mr. Steph Curry. They are based in the Bay Area. And that commercial was the basis for a couple of videos that I did in reference to Steph Curry, in my view, clearly being a Monarch athlete or an MK asset. We know that the Bay Area is a hotbed for mind control. So was Ken Jeong put under the programming while he was out in the Oakland area at Kaiser Permanente? Or was it done earlier? Who knows? Either way, he certainly seems to be very familiar with many Luciferian hand signs, one of them being the quote-unquote W, which is showing the unity of the Father and the Son. That is what that hand sign is when they wrap the ring finger around the middle finger. The middle finger represents Baal or Saturn. The ring finger represents Apollo, the sun. The S-U-N and the S-O-N. The middle finger also represents the phallus of Baal or the phallus of Saturn. So when they wrap it together, they're showing the unity of the Father and the Son. That also represents the number 23 because, as we know, the letter W is the 23rd letter in the alphabet. We also know that the number 23 represents DNA. That's why the god Hermes or Tahuti, Thoth, whatever you want to call him, is always shown with the caduceus, which are the serpents intertwining with one another, representing DNA. Okay? So those are the meanings behind those hand signs. As we can see here once again, Ken Jeong is throwing up that hand sign. And no, he's not a member of Death Row Records. Now, hopefully this hand gesture here will provide even more proof and context for certain brothers who might not be so sure. As we can see, Ken Jeong is throwing up the quote-unquote OK sign, or the alleged 666 sign, over his left eye, showing what? That he has insight, he has understanding in many of the mystery school principles that should show veneration of the mother goddess. Remember, the left eye is the eye of Hathor. So when you see many of these celebrities highlight their left eye or wink with their right eye and leave their left eye open, they're showing what? That they are initiates into the Eleusinian mysteries, or at least the modern day version of the Eleusinian mysteries, which are based in the practice of worshiping or bowing down to Isis or Cybele as the goddess of wisdom. That's how they believe they gain greater understanding of the earth. And you see it all over television. If you watch enough TV, they're always trying to push the notion of Mother Nature or Mother Earth. They refuse to give credit to the Most High. They want to transition everything over to the God is a woman concept. And we see here, Ken Jeong is a believer in that concept. That is how he got into the industry. Once again, the producers who found him, allegedly, are Brandon Tartikoff and Buddy Friedman. And as I've stated in other videos, it's so amazing that a group of people, the quote-unquote Caucasian Jews who are supposed to believe in the Torah, always seem to be so well steeped in the pagan mystery school system. Very interesting. Until you understand that all Kabbalah is the Caucasian Jewish version of the old Babylonian mystery school system. That's all it is. The so-called tree of life in the Kabbalah is actually the tree of knowledge. And I'll be delving into that in another video. The god of the Kabbalah is Baal. That is why they must utilize blood sacrifices. That is why they worship the bull or any horned entity, the bull or the goat, the ram, what have you. Here goes Ken Jeong again, very slyly trying to throw up the double horned hand sign. With both hands, he's throwing up the horned hand sign, or the quote-unquote Manu Cornuto. Brothers, these celebrities, they don't just come out from nowhere. They're prepped, they're trained, and then they're introduced to the masses. That's why I hypothesize that it's very possible that Brandon Tartikoff and Buddy Friedman allegedly, once again, what I'm saying is alleged, it's just speculation, but when they saw him at the comedy stand-up routine that he was doing at Duke University, they told him to come out to the West Coast, and he may have been put under the programming while he was out there. Who knows? Okay, so now, brothers, this is a very important depiction here. This statue is of the personage that I always mention, that being Harpocrates, or in the ancient Coptic language, Harupa-Kared, or Horus the Boy. He's also known as Cupid, the pagan deity that we associate with love or the heart, or Valentine's Day. What we call Cupid is actually in reference to Harpocrates. And I understand that many people will be incredulous by many of these things because people don't like to admit that they've been tricked or they've been fooled. But these are notions and sentiments that we're programmed with from our childhood about Christmas and Valentine's Day and Easter, and they're all good things. They're good things if you're a pagan or if you're a Luciferian. But that is what those notions, that's what they represent. But once again, this is Harpocrates. Notice that he has his right index finger over his mouth. This is an image that the people of Greece, really by that time the Macedonians, who were calling themselves Greeks, they saw this image in Kemet when they invaded and conquered, and they adapted the image to look like them. So as we know, Heru was a quote-unquote so-called African. What the Macedonians would do is they would take depictions of the Comedic gods and they would make them look Caucasian. So this is where we get this image from. They really were not sure what the forefinger over the mouth meant, but to them, it looked like someone who was trying to vow silence or vow a secret that he would never break. That is how Harpocrates came to be known as the god of secrets or silence. And to this day, that is what this image is meant to represent, from a programming aspect for many of these assets sprinkled all across the entertainment industry, the political world, the sports industry, so on and so forth. So you will often see them take photos with their forefinger over their mouth. Why am I bringing that up? Because I'm about to contextualize it right now. Just remember, this entity here, who's represented with angel's wings, or quote unquote angel's wings, is Heru the boy, or Heru the child. Also keep in mind that Aleister Crowley, the top witch and the top Satanist, the top Luciferian of the last 130 years, his treatise on the occult, the Book of the Law, was dictated to him by an emissary from Heru. Okay? So most of these celebrities are what are known as Crowleyites. Their religion is Crowleyism, like Jay-Z, he's a Crowleyite. The Beatles, they were Crowleyites. Michael Jackson, that's a part of their programming component. Okay? Now, brothers, we just finished looking at a statue or a depiction of Harpocrates, and I noted how he had his right index finger over his mouth to show that he was the quote-unquote god of secrets. As we can see, the recently deceased rapper Mac Miller, he knew who he worshipped. That was a part of his climb to fame in the rap industry or the rap world. He has his right forefinger over his mouth in the same way as the statue. And if we do a close-up, we'll see that he has the angel or Harpocrates over his mouth to show you that that is who this pose is an imitation of. You see that, brothers? That's the same entity that we just saw, Harpo or Harpocrates, and he's doing the same pose. Now back to Ken Jeong or Ken Jeong. We see him also doing the same pose for Harpocrates, but we're going to expound on it a little further. But once again, just notice that he's doing that same pose, and we've already seen other photos of him showing that he very clearly has an affinity for the Luciferian principles or ideologies, because if not, where would he get this understanding from unless he was programmed to do this? Now here he goes with the left forefinger making the same pose. These people understand what they're a part of. The masses are not meant to understand it. We dwell in front of the curtain. They're allowed behind the curtain. Remember, as I always state, behind the curtain, they bow down the knee to Baal, or whatever they want to call him. Pan, the god of witchcrafts. Bacchus, the bisexual, transgendered god of the entertainment industry, or of the music world, the acting world, the theater. That is Bacchus. And Bacchus, by the way, is who is referred to in Isaiah the 14th chapter. When you see that term Lucifer, or the light bearer, it's talking about the mother and the son, Venus and Bacchus. In the Hebrew, the term is Hallel. I believe it's spelled Heylel. That's talking about the Bacchus. He was also the god of vegetation. We know who that is as well. That's Asar or Osiris, also known as Tammuz or Demuzet, the god of vegetation. It's all talking about the same entity. But once again, Lucifer is not the same as Satan. Satan is the adversary. That's the adversary to mankind. Lucifer is the light bringer. Lucifer acts as the intermediary between the spirits on the left-hand side and people here on the earth. The top Luciferian on the planet Earth today is whoever the Pope is. The Pope is acting as the vicar of Janus. He's pretty much the vicar of the ancient pharaohs of Egypt, or Kemet. That is why they wear the same headdress. They understand that in the quote-unquote Catholic Church, they worship Janus. Janus is the two-headed god, the god of doorways. Same thing as Heru. Janus is known in ancient Kemet as Ra. Ra was reincarnated as Heru. The right eye symbolizes that sun, quote-unquote, deity. That is pretty much all the entertainment industry is about. Everything from the celebrations or the award ceremonies to the films, the movies, etc. It's meant to be a reinvigoration of the customs of the ancient world. That's it. Understand once again that Harpo or Harpocrates, as I've already stated, is also known as Cupid. We know that Cupid is represented by what? The heart. Heart, and I've stated this in other videos, in the Babylonian or Aramaic tongue, the same word was used for heart as for the sun, that being Bel, B-E-L. So Bel, we know, was a Babylonian entity or so-called Babylonian deity who was known as the confounder. He's also known as the Riddler or the prophet, per se. Other terms for him were Nebo. All that's talking about Cush. So these people, they just want to keep the ancient customs going and get the masses to also bow down the knee to their gods in a very surreptitious way. Now, as we can see here, Ken Jeong is going to very cryptically show you who his God is. His God is the God of the heart, that being Heru. Once again, the symbol for Hippocrates was the heart. Why is that? Because the people of Kemet believed that the heart was the sun of the body. The heart, from an anthropomorphic perspective, represented to the human body what the sun represented to the quote-unquote cosmos or the firmament or what have you. That's what they believed. So that's why Ra or Heru came to embody the heart. And once again, that's why this dude is pointing to this. He's trying to act as if it's based on him being a physician. No, he's trying to show you who his allegiances are with. He has to do that in order to maintain his standing in the entertainment world. Okay, so now we're just going to close out the video by lightly touching on certain famous comedians from the near past, just to show you that the entertainment industry has always been about the same thing. As we can see here, Red Fox throwing up the quote-unquote mudra. And Red Fox, by the way, even though modern-day comedians and affluent people are known for being quote-unquote busted for sleeping with transgenders or transsexuals or what have you, whatever you want to call them, Red Fox also used to deal with trannies back in the day, quiet as kept. He was deeply steeped in the craft. That's why he got the TV show back in the 70s. I mean, brothers, to be very honest with you, anyone who is gaining any sort of prominence in the entertainment industry today has to get down with the team. So back then, it was far more flagrant. It was far more flagrant. Once again, the reason why these people have to be bent over and also bend over other people is because that represents an exchange of spiritual energy. That is part of the Bacchanalian mystery school system or the Bacchanalian rituals. They're all pansexuals. I did a video a very long time ago on Hugh Hefner, who was a master MK Ultra programmer of sex slaves. And he had a painting in his home of himself as Bacchus or Pan or a satyr, half man, half goat. And all of the quote-unquote Playboy bunnies were his maenads, meaning his adoring female fans who would kill for him. I touched on this in that video right after his passing. And I'm also going to touch on it again in relation to R. Kelly, because R. Kelly also is a programmer. That's another thing. Once they get to a high enough level in that world, they get the keys to use sex slaves whenever they want, however they want. But as we can see here, Red Fox, he was in the know. He was on the team. Bill Cosby, not much needs to be said about this dude. As we can see here, he's showing the one eye, the right eye, to show, once again, that he worships Heru, or Ra, the sun god. That's part of his Kabbalistic programming. I'm going to do a video on Bill Cosby, hopefully in the near future. I've touched on him in the past. He is, in my view, an MK programmer, an MK handler, and most likely an asset himself. He got started in the U.S. military back in the 50s. He was at the Bethesda Naval Hospital back in the early 50s at the same time that they were perfecting many of their programming mechanisms. I believe Dr. Charles Savage was there at the same time in the early 50s. He was one of the forerunners of the Monarch or MK mind control program. I believe back then it was known as Project Chatter. But Bill Cosby was also there at the Bethesda Naval Hospital in Maryland. So you can only guess what happened with him. But Bill Cosby is an asset. He always has been, always will be. Eddie Murphy and also Rick James, as we can see here. And Rick James has the honey blonde dye in his hair. The blonde hair is also for Harpocrates. We see that Rick James is throwing up the goat hand sign, or the Manu Cornuto hand sign with his left hand, for Pan. And Eddie Murphy throwing up the quote-unquote OK sign, or the Mudra, the sex sign, for the consummation of the mother goddess and the father god to make the son. So it comes out to the Baphomet, the bringing together of the feminine principle and the masculine principle. Eddie Murphy always been in the know. He came through the witch COVID known as Saturday Night Live. So this notion that people were surprised back in the late 90s when he was caught with trannies, they should not have been surprised. But then again, we were all surprised because we did not know or understand how the entertainment industry was ran back then. Right now, we're in the age of information. We're in the age of exposure. So now we understand things on a far higher level than we did back then. Back then, we just saw Eddie Murphy and Bill Cosby and these people, and we said, wow, they're great, they're talented. Not understanding what it took for them to get to where they were at and stay there. It didn't just take hard work and talent. That was part of it, yes. But another part of it was that they had to bow down and they had to become initiated into the craft. Now, this is Steve Harvey. Steve Harvey, for those of you who are familiar, you'll know him as basically the host of every major show on television. All major hosts are MK handlers, by the way, including Nick Cannon, the guy who likes to act like he's so woke. He's a handler also. That's why they let him have Mariah Carey, because he had her keys. He's also an asset, by the way, Nick Cannon is. But as we can see here, just getting back to Steve Harvey, we can see the pyramid hand sign that he's making. And he's standing right there next to the peacock. For those of you who don't know, and I may have mentioned this in another video, the peacock is a symbol for the mother goddess, Hera, H-E-R-A. All the major broadcasting systems, the quote-unquote channels, are all governed under the energy of the mother goddess. Whether it's the all-seeing eye that we see on CBS, the peacock that we see on NBC, so on and so forth. They're all governed under the energy of the mother goddess. Because the mother goddess is known for being able to see everything. That's why you have what they call the Bohemian Grove out there in California, that is presided over by the owl. The owl was the symbolic animal of Minerva, who was the Greek goddess of wisdom. In Kemet, she was known as Sekhmet, I believe the vulture goddess. As the vulture goddess, she could see everything. I believe that was the vulture goddess, either Sekhmet or Maut. Either way, same thing. She was represented by the vulture because the vulture, like the owl, can see things that 99.9% of other creatures cannot see. And that's why those were the totemic animals of the mother goddess. Now, the peacock became the symbol of Hera because the peacock is not necessarily known for its eyesight, but it is known for the eyes that are on its tail feathers. And that is why it became a symbolic animal of Hera. Once again, the mother goddess is always associated with knowledge and wisdom. And as we can see here, they have Steve Harvey taking this photograph because he's showing that he is a proverbial son of the mother goddess. He is proverbial Heru. That's why he's forming the pyramid with his hands, and he's standing there adjacent to a symbol for the mother goddess. Here's Chris Rock, someone who makes a lot of money trying to act wokety woke, but there's nothing wokety woke about Chris Rock. He is a Saturnian through and through. He is a worshiper, a venerator of the same quote-unquote triune on the pagan side. As we can see, he's throwing up the mudra, or the 666 hand sign, with both hands. Here's Chris Rock pointing to his left eye, showing what? He is bowed down to the mother goddess. That is the eye of Hathor. He's letting you know that he can see things that the masses cannot see. That being that the only true God is Heru, his mother Aset, and the father God. That is who he worships, Saturn. He's a Saturnian. Here's Chris Tucker. Former quote-unquote sex slave of the industry. He got turned out so bad, allegedly. He got turned out so bad, that man left the industry. He left the entertainment world for a long period of time to try to get all those demons off of him. But like they all do, they always come back. Because they're all nothing but good prostitutes, every last one of them. Once they sell their soul, they try to get the dirt off of them by joining a church or a mosque or a temple or something like that. But they always come back because at the end of the day, they gave themselves over to Lucifer. So they might as well make as much money as they can. We're looking at Chris Tucker right here. We see all the signs of a sex slave. He has the blonde wig. And of course, this is from the film The Fifth Element, but they dress him like this on purpose. Basically, he's in drag. This is the Bacchus right here, aka Momus or Mumis, M-O-M-I-S or M-O-U-M-I-S, the god of comedy. What the god of comedy would do is he would roast the other gods to the point where they got so annoyed with him that they kicked him out of the pantheon. But as we can see once again, he's wearing the leopard print. Momus was known as the spotted one, as was Bacchus, as was Asar, so on and so forth. And of course, the blonde hair is for Hippocrates. It's also to show that he's beta programmed. As I've stated, he was a sex slave. Allegedly. But that was back in the 1990s that Chris Tucker first got famous. Can you imagine? With all this Me Too shit coming out now with these broads, you know, there are so many dudes in Hollywood who would love to tell their story, but they're embarrassed as hell to talk about what happened to them, to try to get a certain level of fame in Hollywood. They are embarrassed as hell. They couldn't do what the women are doing even if they wanted to, because they'd never get another role again, and they would have to incriminate their damn self. Because Hollywood has a file and a tape on all these dudes, every last one of them, so they can never tell. But once again, just getting back to Chris Tucker, this was for a role that he did in the film The Fifth Element, which is based on alchemy. The fifth element is Akasha, or outer space. Of course, the first four elements are fire, water, earth, and air. And the fifth element is known as Akasha, or outer space. If you notice, Aaliyah played the role of Akasha in that film Queen of the Damned, where she was proverbial Persephone. But that's a whole other video. So anyway, peace.